Okay, here we go, rock and roll.
Okay, you ready?
Take one, shoot the rehearsal, lights, camera, action, right?
Hi there, I'm Jonny Lieberman, and I am joined by two very special guests. We have Davide Amantea, who we're just going to call Dave, so I won't butcher it anymore.
Correct.
Magnus Walker, that one's an easy one. We're here to talk about a car, the Pininfarina Battista, but a very special one-off that these two gentlemen put together using, say, the style of Magnus Walker, but the expertise of Dave here.
we can say that, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be a long day.
Yeah. And so let's get into it. But I guess the best way to start is, how did you two meet? Because seemingly very different worlds, hyper luxury, electric supercars, and Mr. Dirt Don't Slow You Down, drilling holes in old Porsches.
Well, you can never judge a book by the cover, right? Like, really, you don't know who's who. But the funny answer to that question that I'm going to say is Dave and I met at the Automobili Pininfarina beard convention, right?
Yeah.
Remember that beard convention?
Yes.
You know, that's the funny story. But you want to tell them the real story?
Well, I mean, the real contact was on stage. And I remember that I was presenting in one stage 3 cars in a row, and it was really fun that day. And it was an evening in Monterey, and there was Pura Vision, the B95 freshly presented, and the Nino Farina Design Edition Battista. And then I saw in the crowd Magnus. I'm really fan of him. I do love his spirit, and he do things with passion. And it's basically a person that I really admire because he does what he loves, and he does in the best way. So when I saw him in the crowd, I don't know why, but that evening I was wearing his shoes.
The shoes? But yeah, we're not the same size foot.
No, I mean, and he come up on the stage, and we shake our hands, and then we spoke about the shoes, but also talking about the design and so on. And then immediately I think that there was the right chemicals. I'm really passionate guy. I'm really 100% Italian. I'm really motivated to do things, and move by passion. So for me, Automobili Pininfarina is not a secret. Is my dream come true, designing for Pininfarina.
Sure.
And after that, our relationship started. This idea to have a collaboration was really nice, and it's pure art and pure passion, right? This is the base.
Yes, completely.
And the Magnus.
So it started with a pair of Nike shoes. I guess it's how we met. If it wasn't for the sneakers, the 277 Dunk, maybe maybe we would not be here.
I mean, the beards help, right?
The beards definitely help. Yeah.
I liked it for
what that because my answer was completely different to how we actually really met.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm glad that for once I'm not baby beard around you.
That's Dave is trimmed. He's trimmed up for the event.
I left mine long. Yeah.
Dave is trimmed up.
So,
3 men in a beard.
Pininfarina to you, what does that mean?
I suppose growing up as a kid, everyone falls in love with cars at an early age. I think that story is universal. You have the Matchbox, the Corgi. You've got something in your pocket that you carry around.
Sure.
I've got one here, but I suppose my earliest memory of a Pininfarina, which this is not, has to be the Ferrari in Magnum PI.
Oh, sure.
So that to me was sort of, I suppose, my first memory. But really before that, I will say, now that I'm really thinking about this question, which hasn't been asked before, my Uncle David actually had a Ferrari 246 Dino.
Okay.
And he had that in the 70s. And so we grew up working class in Sheffield, England. My dad was into cars, but we didn't have cool cars. But my Uncle David actually owned a Ferrari, which was a very big deal in the mid-70s in the industrial northern city of Sheffield, England. And ironically, he traded that Dino, the 246 Dino, into the fiberglass 308 GTB when it came out in 1975. Now you might say, which one's more desirable? They're both desirable.
Yeah.
So for me, it was really the Ferrari 246 Dino into the 308 and then into the 328 Magnum PI car. And the very first Pininfarina design I owned was the very first Ferrari I ever owned, which was a 1979 308 GTB, the last carbureted GTB, which I probably owned in the late 90s when they were affordable.
Yeah.
So, that was the early intro. But, of course, I tell this story quite a lot. Any kid growing up in the 70s and 80s, chances are you had one of these three posters on the wall. Porsche 930 Turbo, Lamborghini Countach, or a Ferrari 512 Berlinetta Boxer.
Yes, I had all
So
three.
those
I think I had
were
all
the-
three in one poster.
That was a trifecta next to, the Charlie's Angels poster, or for me, it was heavy metal poster. So
Yeah.
as a kid growing up, I was surrounded by auto sports. I remember watching James Hunt become Formula One champion in 1976, Barry Sheen on two wheels. So even though we didn't have a cool car, we were exposed to it through Grandstand and automobile magazines and stuff like that. And so that's kind of the connection that began as a 10-year-old almost 50 years ago.
Now, tough question. This is an EV. And I'm saying tough question because I have a podcast about EVs. It's
inevitable, right?
The inevitable. And I said, hey, Magnus, come on the podcast. And your response was, no.
Yeah,
Very polite, but very succinct. So explain the relation of EVs to Magnus Walker.
Well, it's high voltage rock and roll, and I've driven a lot of EVs. I'm not actually anti-EV.
I didn't say you were.
No, so in that,
I'm still pissed. Go ahead.
not going on the show at the time had nothing to do whether I like EVs or don't like EVs. I mean, there's a lot of things I like about EVs. One, they're very fast. Two, instant acceleration. Three, you actually, most of the time, don't hear them coming in the sense of, my pet peeve is usually Mercedes, BMW, Brabus exhaust, loud, barking, backfiring, dude bros doing 20 miles an hour, just making a lot of noise and not
Yes,
going fast.
yes.
The EV is the complete opposite of that. And I've driven a lot of them, but when I drove this car, the Automobili Pininfarina Battista, the yellow one.
Oh, I drove. Yeah.
So when I drove that car, I took it up the crest. This is 18 months ago. It was November 2023, so it's almost 18 months ago. And I judge how fast a car is in the crest by how many times you can hit a certain, call it triple digit speed, right?
I do the same thing.
And quite a lot of cars will do it comfortably X amount of times in X amount of places. But when I drove the Automobili Pininfarina Battista, I hit an all-time high of 142. And I'd never gone that fast in the crest before. Some people might have done it in other things, but I'd personally never gone that fast.
Yep.
And it was just how it put the power to the ground with instant acceleration, instant torque, but also no real drama. Believe it or not, when you mention 2,000 horsepower, it's intimidating, and obviously you work up to the performance level of the car, but it was the way it put the power through the wheels, to the tire, to the contact patch of the tarmac, and actually hooked up, and you'd brake later, come in and out of corners faster, but it was the way it accelerated in a short amount of time. But it wasn't just the power, it was the way it put the power to the ground and the handling that gave you confidence to incrementally push the level of performance up to a higher level of capability. Because I always say the road will determine the ultimate speed, whether you have 500 horsepower or 2,000 horsepower.
Sure.
The road is going to max you out, right? And it's how you can sort of get the most out of that vehicle on that road in the shortest amount of space on the road. That was kind of where I fell in love with it in a way.
I mean, we had a very similar experience because I drove that same yellow car, and I remember, for a month afterwards, everyone said, like, how is it? And I said, turns out, 2,000 horsepower, that's the right amount. I never knew. Like,
Too much is never enough.
It was never enough before. Now I know exactly what's perfect. No, remarkable car. Okay, so then how, you guys talked about shoes and beards. How did it say, hey, we're going to drop this car off at your house and, do what you want, and we're going to build a car together? How did that happen?
Let me start it, and you can follow up if you may.
Yes.
So the infamous drive with, I think it was Dan, right, that day?
Yes.
In the yellow car up the crest was a very spirited drive. And after that drive, Dave arrived in fresh from Turin.
Yes.
And we met him under the 6th Street Bridge with the yellow car. And because Dave loves life, obviously at that point, we had to go have a drink.
Of course.
A little celebratory drink. So look who's coming through.
Hey, Willa.
So we went and had a drink next door, and literally over a conversation, which sort of went just like this. Hey, how would you feel about storing this 2018 life-size resin design study model, of which only 2 of them were ever built, which had been at the Geneva Auto Show and then
Yes.
had gone around the world on a tour and was just coming out of a Pininfarina exhibition where it had been at the Peterson Museum for a year. And these guys, for some reason, hadn't planned to ship it back to Italy. And they simply said, can you store it for us? Do you want it? So of course I said yes.
Smart.
And then about a month later, a gift arrived from Dave that's on the wall behind me. And then a couple of weeks after that, the conversation began, which I will hand over to you, as to how we went from this plain blue rolling piece of automotive Pininfarina, Automobili Pininfarina artwork, a one of two in the world, to what we are about to sort of debut very, very soon. Dave?
Yes, I mean, the idea came up because we want to celebrate, the meaning of Battista and what we are trying to do. So now, frankly speaking, anybody in the business world knows that you cannot build up a company based on one car only, right?
Sure.
So we are here to present a brand that want to, become the pinnacle in the luxury segment, in a true luxury segment. And with the heritage of Pininfarina, we want to basically communicate. We are getting closer to the 100th anniversary of Pininfarina. This year is the 95th. Getting closer, we want to say that there will be another 100 years. And the message was pretty simple. This car, it's a meaning that it's above anything that she represents. She is the first Pininfarina with the badge on the bonnet, and we make this in order to give a gift to our customer. It's a sort of an investment based on what will happen and what happened in the past. And by combining those, there was never a real moment where we were saying what we were trying to do artistically, And then I say, look, I'm a person that always interact and is driven by passion. And definitely Magnus is. And then by being inspired by his story, I read the book that he gave me, and I say, this is it. I mean, this is exactly the story that we want in order to explain exactly who it is, how great the design can come out with true inspiration that driven by passion. And then us, like Automobili Pininfarina, can represent any personality in the world.
Right.
And when you choose, I don't know, person that is more, let's say, plain, it's almost easy to do a configuration.
Sure.
But this is what we do. We invite people. I hit a lot and drink a lot with the clients.
Hey.
We have fun.
Seems to be a theme with Automobili Pininfarina owners. This guy's going to bring the whiskey, this guy's going to get the club, and everything's going to be good.
At the end of the story, Johnny, it's an experience. So we let them visit the atelier, stay in the studio with the designers, seeing where Cambiano is and how it is, and the beautiful things that is still preserving the heritage feeling of that glorious story. And then basically we start to know each other, the customer, better. And this is the moment where really I can help the customer. We did the same with Magnus. And then we took inspiration from a lot of things that he did. And then we tried to basically find and looking for sparks and then follow the flow. Because we were not, building up a story. We were really working, we even argue, because this is where...
Yes, we did.
Well, you have to, right?
No, this is the moment where you're working with passion,
Yeah.
You want to, do the best, right? And we were basically challenged both sides in order to achieve the best, but preserving exactly what is the meaning of this car. So pure art is pure art, right?
Yeah.
And in a car that, has 2,000 horsepower, capability of driving is amazing, but the spirit of this car will be forever. Any Battista that will be produced in a sort of period of time, will be the end of production of Battista, there will be a number.
Right.
This number represent a elite of a person that participate in a milestone of the career of Pininfarina that is today long 95 years. And then for me it was like, okay, let's create a story that will be forever. And then with the Magnus, I said like, okay, this is it. I mean, we have to make a car that it's really disruptive, but in the right way.
Right.
This is what we call irreverent elegance,
So what is so disruptive? What is so different? What is so special about this car that you did?
Well, first of all, we create the new tailgate. The standard Battista has basically it's made of glass. Okay. For this car, we create a complete and we develop a new pieces. So only this car has it.
The louvers.
The louvers, that is the air
Nice.
intake on
Gotta
the
get those in.
You need loot, right? I mean, it's not a car otherwise.
Louvers.
specific trim. We choose based in his taste and his style the H leather by Frau, one of the prestigious leather,
Sure.
and that's giving this feeling of being used, you know, but is what we call smell of authenticity, what we call.
The smell of authenticity.
I
Yes,
mean,
it's have to be
you
really
got that.
Thank you.
genuine treatment with modern and sophisticated material.
Right.
So we developed together with a company a textile. Okay, the company is Quadrat, and with their team together we develop since a fashion textile. We translated in automotive textile, which is something really special if you consider this exercise just for one
Yeah.
car. So and
No,
we do
I
this,
know what goes into that. I mean, that's a lot of like
the flammability.
You got to talk to crash people and all kinds of stuff.
So
yeah.
doing this is really the meaning of what we meant for high bespoke treatment. You know, a customer have to basically feel, you know, naturally to ask whatever he wants, and then it will be based on time, difficult timing for developing, cost. It will be his choice to have it or not. In this case, was much easier because with Magnus we want to represent his personality, and we have plenty of, you know,
Plenty of personality.
exactly.
Well, I was wondering, Magnus, like you know, you look at this, which we'll say was like the rough draft in a way.
Correct.
But like, what was in your head compared to how the finished product came out?
Well, for me, I've never actually collaborated with anyone else, let alone this world famous design house, Pininfarina, and Automobili Pininfarina, as Dave's saying, 95-year-old company. Everything I've done in the past is on my own cars.
Right.
I've famously not built customer cars, not worked on customer cars.
In fact, if I may, the number of rich dudes I know that are like, oh, hey, you know Magnus, like, I'll give him a blank check. I just want one of his cars.
Let's bring that guy down today. He can have one of these. It's an Automobili Pininfarina Battista.
I might have a number or two, yeah.
We
yeah,
need that
yeah,
guy. So
yeah.
for me, I'd always design things in the Porsche world that were just specific to my own personal taste. And that inspiration is usually coming from what I consider the glory days of motorsport being the 60s and 70s. I say it's from the Vic Elford Monte Carlo Rally all the way to the 1970 Dickie Atwood first overall win for Porsche at Le Mans. But growing up as a kid in the 70s and 80s, my influence was sort of broad beyond purely Porsche. Yeah, people know me as the guy with the Porsches, but you know, I like variety as well.
Sure.
So ultimately with this car, what sealed the sort of deal was I liked the way it drove. And I kind of, you know, was excited at the prospect to collaborate with these guys. So my job was wasn't a job, it was an opportunity, it was rather straightforward. How I design, I always say the idea is the most important thing. And the idea cannot be taught. You can't go to school and learn an idea. You can learn where an idea came from or how to implement it or how to manufacture it or communicate it through whatever tools, whether it's AI or Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever program people use to design cars in. My end of it was the livery, but I wanted to add my own personality to it. And part of it was influenced through, I'm sort of into this zone of color blocking and motorsports liveries, whether it's stripes or color blocking. That's what I've done on my own cars. Sort of bold graphics, whether it's a 914 Art car or the 993, which I describe as this combination of United Colors of Benetton meets some battleship camouflage thing thrown together in a blender, and what comes out is this color blocking. The goal here was not to replicate a 277 livery, but to create something that was more organic and flowing.
And you could have easily done 277. That would have been done,
That would
dusted,
be too
easy.
So for me, this process actually was pretty straightforward. I've got a bunch of tape behind me from 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch vinyl, all the way up to 2-inch paper tape. And I would literally just sort of walk around the car and start at the front and run a tape line down. And I made each side a little bit different. And then I would take photos on my iPhone and send them to Dave.
Yes.
And he would come back with, yes, I like that, or no, I don't. And we got in this flow of, you know, a time zone difference of me sending photos on the phone of what I've done and then Dave interpreted them, and there was one sort of battle along the way where I really was sort of sticking to something, and Dave was sticking to why he didn't think it would work, and I'm like, maybe this is not meant to be.
Who won? Who won the battle?
Italians.
Who won the battle? Who won the battle?
No, it's even because at the end we realized
No, that battle.
we realized exactly what he was looking for, but that I could basically create a process internally that can guarantee quality, symmetries, because when you have a livery that is really on top of all over the car, so the symmetrization, because everything is put by hand, we don't use tool, it's really tricky. And also the technique that we are painting, we don't bring the car in the oven, but only the parts.
Right.
So you have to be really precise to deassemble the car and put basically as much as you can, really, really precise. And what we choose, and this is the boundary that he let us push over, is like lines is the most difficult one.
Yeah.
Especially when go in all direction, X, Y, Z. So by doing that, we did a really difficult one, but at the end of the story, it was really emotional. You know, having this line that is disappearing and follow the. So we fine-tune the technique, and then when both sides were confident that we can realize, and he was really getting exactly what he wants, this was the perfection. So
I started with these original drawings here, which I'll show you really briefly. And the turning point was, for me, doing these what I call 30-second doodles was really easy. It went really easy. It either flowed or it didn't. But the big turning point was when Dave invited me out to visit Automobili Pininfarina at the factory and meet the team and start sketching with the team on a bigger scale. And that was where I really understood the difficulties of me just putting tape and running down the side of the car in 30 seconds is easy.
Yeah.
And for me, nothing needs to be perfect. But Automobili Pininfarina, they have a different standard, a different quality of perfection. And so it was understanding that language of as to what actually can be done. And then once I'd grasped that, which really came together when we worked together at the factory and then went to Villa d'Este together. Then after that point, it was pretty straightforward.
Yes.
It was just a matter of picking the final color, and this is not it.
Right.
But the process of getting there was a combination of the way I do things very, very organically with no plan. You know, I barely sketch. It's quick line drawings, and ironically, the Nike sneaker was done that way. The 914 was done that way. And I've been doodling since I was 6 years old that way. My skill level is not actually advanced, but we were able to communicate.
But it's so funny, you know, I'm glad you keep mentioning the 914, because I remember when you first did that car,
Right, you know,
and when I saw the finished Battista, I said, oh, that's the 914 idea. Obviously, it looks nothing like it.
Ironically, this is more 993. The 993 art car was a bit more of the inspiration towards it, but the 914 obviously is in there.
But what I meant was the color blocking. You know what I mean? Like it's very instantly recognizable as your car, even though it's a electric multi-zillion dollar Italian hypercar.
Exactly.
It brought to mind your. I don't know, four-figure 914.
I could not have said it better, because I think when you can create something that becomes a signature, like 277 everyone knows, but you just hit the nail on the head that's actually way more relevant of the 914.
Yeah.
You could tell that that was my car. So that means in a way I've put my signature on a style.
Right.
And this is our signature on a style of a one of something that I'm really proud to be part of. The fact that every day I come into this space that I've owned for 25 years, and I just sit in a corner and walk around and look at it, and I kind of pinch myself. And like a lot of people come through here and I don't tell them. And then when they walk in this room, which is purposely the only room that doesn't have anything from Stuttgart in it,
Right.
it became the atelier design room to showcase this. People literally stop in their tracks. And they either know what it is, or if they don't, they go, what is that?
Right.
And then I tell them the whole story. They're either fans of Pininfarina and they know all about them, or you go, these guys are the world's #1 design house. They've been doing it for 95 years. They've designed lots of famous cars, most of the famous Ferraris. all of a sudden they look at me like, how did this happen?
Right.
I mean, this is a conversation starter. How did I get here? This wasn't planned. There's not a team. There's not an agent, not a manager pitching these guys. It happened organically over a beard and a pair of sneakers, I believe.
Yes.
And that was it. You can't script that stuff. You can't go to school to learn how do you pitch someone an idea, right?
Right.
And everything I've ever done that I've been passionate about, and I only do things I'm passionate about, happened this way, purely organically.
Yes.
And so we knew we were on the right track to get to this point, which is barely 18 months later, where we're going to unveil it, which I'm super excited about. And ultimately, though, the goal is to make one of one and drive the physical car. And that will just be lifetime achievement of how did this happen? I don't know. I know, but I'm just super pumped that we're even here talking about it.
Yes, yes. No, it was a really great experience also from our side, because we were basically testing what we were trying to do, and then let any type of customer understand what does it mean to be in contact with us. It's the experience.
Right. This is what is possible.
No, we really open our company to anyone. Honestly speaking, I didn't work in any company, but I can tell that the way that we are hosting people, the way that we interact, it's a different level. We really become friend for the people that wants, because we don't want to bother people. We are not pushing, but exactly on the commonality to have passion. When we see a customer that have passion, then basically we open our door to anything. You want to design physically one part, we don't say no. We say like, okay, there are customer, really special one, they say, I want my Battista to be special. Okay, let's sit together and I'll try to explain him what we were discussing before, me and you. There is parts that are for safety, and there is nothing that I can do. Even if we fight with engineers to have a special homologation, you cannot achieve airbags and those stuff.
Yeah, hard points. Yeah.
Exactly. Especially because, don't forget, why it's so special? Because this car, it's a full and worldwide homologated car. So if you take a show and display car, it's much easier to work on. But when it's full homologated, it's get even less, it's reduced the opportunity to customize. But what we do here is really say to the client, you come over, we discover exactly what you're looking for, and you cannot believe how many collectors, I'm not going to say the name, that have more than 20 up to 200 cars, they don't recall the configuration that they made. They barely recognize, and then I get pissed off because I wish to have 300 cars, and definitely
I could tell stories, but yes, checks
I
out.
can remember any any single stitches, because there is a reason. And then I discovered that mainly happen not with passion, but is a sort of purchase with no reason and no memory.
Right.
What we are trying to do here is to create those memory. And then it's funny, but saying that in the restaurant we were drinking wine, and during that dinner, a beer, yeah. But when you are with a customer and you talk, there is a moment where out of the blue they say, you know what, I agree. I got the feeling that red is the base color, and we have to do something. But comes because they decided. Comes because they got an experience, a meaning of it. And then trust me, in 10 years' time, when you say, what is the color of the Battista? They say exactly, oh, it's red, and say, oh, do you want a story? We were at in a nice restaurant in Italy. We were discussing with the chief design officer. We were drinking wine, and then I got this color that was always, in front of me tasting wine. So this is the red color that I want.
The color of the wine.
So it has meaning beyond just the purchase price.
One thing I've discovered in the 18 months of collaborating together is Automobili Pininfarina is full of passionate possibilities, right? Yeah. Anything is possible. Obviously it's Italian, it's emotional, you get wrapped up in that emotion. It's a fine Italian suit, a bespoke piece of tailoring in carbon and leather and all the other elements that have been woven into it. And when you see all the little bells and whistles and Easter eggs, as Dave calls them, that are hidden in the A pillar, the B pillar, the center console, under the wing, all these elements that they've brought in from my background.
The back of the seat.
Yeah, which is like a fashion background of bringing these designers.
Back of the seats is my favorite part of the car.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Because that just like stopped me in my tracks.
Can become a standalone chair.
That's what I said.
Home.
I said if I was buying the car, I would say I want 2 more seats, and they're just going to sit right there. No one can sit in them. They're just it's like a sculpture.
It's an art piece. It's a sculpture. I mean, we've all been around a lot of car manufacturers, and I don't think this collaboration would have happened anywhere else because it hasn't, right?
Right.
And it's based on a simple thing of passion and
Yes.
creating something unique. And we can boil it down to the essence of that's what it's about, I think. And that's what Automobili Pininfarina is about with their passionate customers, trying to sort of create their own and achieving their own goal of creating their own bespoke, fine, tailored Italian car. And that's
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
Great. Done, dusted.